The international break is finally over and the Champions League is back again. And with that being said, in today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys my Matchday 5 predictions in the UCL League phase. In today's video, I'm going to be predicting every single scoreline in the 5th matchday. And obviously, if you guys agree with my predictions, remember to leave a comment down below. But if you disagree with my predictions, remember to leave your predictions in the comments down below and I'll be sure to reply to every single comment. This week, I do think there will be a few high-scoring games, and for that reason, I think my predictions are going to be pretty wild. So without further ado, let's get right into this video. Starting off with the first game on Tuesday, we have Slovan Bratislava against AC Milan. At this point, I feel kind of bad for Slovan Bratislava. Obviously, they're not a very common team that we see in the Champions League, but so far in this UCL League phase, they have been the worst team so far. In the first match day, they lost 5-1 against Celtic. Then they lost 4-0 against Manchester City. In the third match day, they lost 2-0 against Jona. And in the fourth match day, they lost 4-1 against Dinamo Zagreb. Obviously, AC Milan haven't been the best so far in this Champions League, and they do sit in 20th place with 2 wins and 2 losses. But in their last game, they got a really convincing win against Real Madrid. And for that reason, against Slovan Bratislava, I think this will be a pretty easy win for AC Milan. So I'm going to predict that they win this game 3-1. Moving on to the next game, we have Sparta Prague against Atletico Madrid. Atletico Madrid, similar to AC Milan, have been pretty inconsistent so far in this Champions League, where they sit in 23rd place, also having gotten 2 wins and 2 losses. But if you look at Sparta Prague, especially this season, they haven't been the best, both in the Champions League, but even in the Czech Republic League, where they currently sit in 4th place, which is much lower than where they usually finish. I think that they've had a lot of trouble closing out games, where even if they do score, and we saw this in their last game against Brest, they always end up conceding. And for that reason, I'm going to predict that Atletico Madrid win this game 2-1. Moving on to the next match, we have Barcelona against Brest. Brest currently sit in 4th place in this Champions League. They have been one of the most surprising teams so far in this competition, because in the Liga, they haven't been performing particularly well. But in the Champions League, from their first 4 games, they've already gotten 3 wins, which is really surprising. But obviously, in my opinion, I think Barcelona have been arguably one of the best teams so far this season. In the La Liga, in the Champions League, they have been scoring some of the most goals I've ever seen. Already so far in this Champions League, from their first 4 games, they have scored the most goals out of any other team, scoring 15, and only conceding 5, leaving them with a very high goal difference of +10. Obviously, Barcelona do have a few injuries, but playing at home against Brest, I think this will be a pretty comfortable win for them. I'm going to predict that they win this game 4-2. Moving on to the next game, we have Bayern Leverkusen against Salzburg. Salzburg, in my opinion, have been pretty disappointing so far in this Champions League, where normally they are a pretty good competitor, but so far in this UCL League phase, they have not been playing good at all. But Bayer Leverkusen similarly haven't been as good as most people thought they would be in this Champions League, where after their first 4 games, they've only gotten 2 wins. And even in the Bundesliga, they have been struggling a lot in recent weeks. But with the home advantage, and after getting smoked by Liverpool in their last game, they have to get a good result in this game. And I do think they will. Playing at home with the home advantage, I'm going to predict that Leverkusen win this game 3-0. Moving on to the next match, we have one of the craziest fixtures in the 5th matchday, and it is Bayern Munich against PSG. Bayern Munich and PSG seem to face up against each other almost every single year in the Champions League, but within the last 5 matchups over the last few years, Bayern Munich have won this matchup 4 out of the last 5 times. PSG in the Liga have been very good this season, and a lot of their new signings and their young players have been playing really well. But in the Champions League, they currently sit in 25th place and they have been really underperforming. Obviously, Bayern Munich have been a little bit inconsistent this season, but with the home advantage, I do think they will win this game 2-1. Moving on to the next game, we have Inter Milan against RB Leipzig. Inter Milan have been very good so far in this Champions League. After their first 4 games, they've already gotten 3 wins and 1 draw, and they currently sit in 5th place on the UCL League phase table. On the other hand, RB Leipzig have been really disappointing, where in the Bundesliga, they're playing pretty well, but in the Champions League, they have been so poor, and after their first 4 games, they have gotten 4 losses. They haven't even drawn a game yet. They have been playing so bad, and obviously playing away against Inter Milan, I think this will be a pretty comfortable win for Inter. I'm going to predict that Inter win this game 3-1. Moving on to the next game, we have Manchester City against Feyenoord. Manchester City are on one of their worst runs in the last decade, where in the last 4 matches in all competitions at the time of recording this video, they have lost every single game. They lost against Tottenham, they lost against Bournemouth, they lost against Sporting in the last match day, and they also recently lost against Brighton in the Premier League. Coming off of that Sporting loss, that was a really tough defeat for Manchester City, where their defense weren't playing good. They could not keep hold of Victor Gyökeres, who scored multiple goals in that game. And in general, they did not play very good and they had a horrible second half. But I do think they will be able to get this win, and I'm going to predict that Man City win 3-2. Moving on to the next match, we have Sporting against Arsenal. Obviously, Sporting have been absolutely incredible so far this season. In the Liga Portugal, in the Champions League, they have been winning almost every single game they play. And obviously, coming off of that 4-1 win against Manchester City, they will be really confident playing at home against Arsenal. The last time that Sporting came up against Arsenal was in the 2023 Europa League, and Sporting actually ended up beating Arsenal to advance to the next round. And I think that that's going to happen again. I think Sporting are just a very good team this season. And even though they did recently lose their manager, I think they're going to carry the momentum from that game against Man City into this game against Arsenal. And I think that they're going to beat Arsenal 2-1. Moving on to the next game, we have Young Boys against Atalanta. Atalanta have been very good so far in this Champions League, but in my opinion, they could be better, because I think that every single game they've played so far, they've been completely dominant. Whether it was against Arsenal, whether it was against Shakhtar, whether it was against Celtic, they've been dominant in every single game. But for example, in those two games against Arsenal and Celtic, they weren't able to score. Even though they had many shots on target, they weren't able to put the game away. Generally, Young Boys are a pretty good team, but so far in this Champions League, they have been really bad and they sit near the bottom of the table. So even though they are playing at home, I think Atalanta will pretty comfortably win this game 3-1. Moving on to the Wednesday fixtures, the first game we got is Red Star Belgrade against Stuttgart. And this, in my opinion, is going to be another upset. Stuttgart are definitely the favorites in this game, and we all remember how good they were last season, where they ended up finishing in second place in the Bundesliga ahead of Bayern Munich. But so far this season, they have not been performing that well. Currently, Stuttgart sit 27th place in the Champions League phase, where they only have gotten one win from their first 4 matches, and playing away against Red Star Belgrade, who are a pretty ruthless team. I think it's going to be very tough for Stuttgart in this game. I'm going to predict that this game is going to end in a 1-1 draw. Moving on to the next game, we have Sturm Graz against Girona. I think that this game could go either way, because Girona are, in my opinion, the better team. But Sturm Graz are also a decent team, and in the Austrian league, they do currently sit in first place. So with the home advantage, I'm going to predict that this game is going to end in a 1-1 draw. Moving on to the next match, we have another highly anticipated match between Aston Villa against Juventus. I think that this is going to be a very interesting game. Both of these teams sit around the same place on the Champions League table, where Aston Villa are in 8th and Juventus are in 11th. But in recent matches, both of these teams have had very different struggles. Aston Villa have had a lot of trouble winning games, and similar to Manchester City, in their last 4 matches, they have lost every single game. While Juventus, on the other hand, haven't been that bad in recent games, and they've actually won a few of their recent games, but they are currently suffering with a lot of injuries. Defenders, midfielders, attackers, they have been losing so many players that are out for injury for the next month or so. So I think that this game could go either way. So for that reason, I think this game is going to end in a 2-2 draw. Moving on to the next match, we have Bologna against Lille. Lille have been another very surprising team so far in this Champions League, where they currently sit in 14th place, but the 2 wins that they have gotten have been against Real Madrid and Atletico Madrid. They beat both Madrid teams back to back in the Champions League. Even though Bologna are playing at home, I just don't think they're going to be able to beat Lille. And it is sad, but I'm going to predict that Lille win this game 2-1. Moving on to the next game, we have Celtic against Club Brugge. Celtic have been very inconsistent so far in this Champions League, where we've seen them play very good against some teams, like against Slovan Bratislava, where they won 5-1. But in some other games, like in their game against Dortmund, they conceded 7 goals. But their form has been pretty good in recent weeks, so I do think they will play pretty good in this match. So I'm going to predict that they beat Club Brugge 2-0. Moving on to the next game, we have Dinamo Zagreb against Borussia Dortmund. This, in my opinion, is going to be another upset. Dortmund have been pretty good so far in this Champions League. They have been winning a lot of games. Obviously, I just talked about that game against Celtic where they beat them 7-1. And even in the Bundesliga, they have been doing pretty good recently. Dinamo Zagreb have not been that good so far in the Champions League. But for some reason, I feel like they're going to beat Dortmund in this game. So I'm going to predict that Dinamo Zagreb win 2-1. Moving on to the next match, we have another amazing match between Liverpool and Real Madrid. Obviously, these teams did play against each other in the 2022-23 Champions League final, where Real Madrid ended up beating Liverpool 1-0. But since that game, I think there has been a real big change in both of these teams. In this game, I do think it will be very, very close. I'm going to predict a very high scoring game, and I could see Real Madrid possibly coming back in the second half, maybe scoring multiple goals and winning this game. But with the home advantage, I think Liverpool will win this game 3-2. Moving on to the next match, we have AS Monaco against Benfica. Benfica, in my opinion, have been very inconsistent so far this Champions League, where we've seen them play incredibly against some teams, but they've also been very, very poor against some other teams. When on the other hand, Monaco have been really surprising this Champions League, where after their first 4 games, they already have gotten 3 wins, and they currently sit in 3rd place. I'm going to predict that Monaco win this game 2-1. And finally, moving on to the last game, we have PSV Eindhoven against Shakhtar Donetsk. I've mentioned it so many times that in my opinion, Shakhtar are a very underrated team. And usually in these Champions League competitions, we can see them upset bigger teams because a lot of people underrate them and they don't really know how good they can play. But so far in this Champions League, they have been really, really underperforming. But even though PSV aren't on the best of form in this competition, I think with the home advantage, they will be able to beat Shakhtar 1-0. And that is the end of my video. Those are my Champions League predictions for the 5th match day in the UCL League phase. If you guys agree with my predictions, remember to leave a comment down below. But if you disagree with my predictions and you think there may be a few upsets here and there, remember to leave your predictions down below and I'll be sure to reply to every single comment. And if you guys did enjoy this video, remember to leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and stay tuned for more videos.